Brakateh Yahweh, Brakateh Yahweh, Brakateh Yahweh, Brakateh Yahweh, Brakateh Yahweh, Brakateh Yahweh, Ba'Hashem Yahushua, Ba'Hashem, Chakudash, the blondes of the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone True Well. Salutations to the hopeful elect out there, you Akim to Sadakim that do this thing in the utmost truth and sincerity. I'm the priest Shaman, and this week's topic I'm going to be talking about something called Transracialism. Transracialism. Which this was a hot topic a couple years ago. You had that Edomite woman that masqueraded herself as a so-called black woman with makeup and identified herself as a black woman, and she went like far up in so-called quote-unquote African-American organization like the NCAAP or something like that. And I think her name was Rachel Dawkins, right? And it was a big thing. It was revealed that she was a so-called white woman. Now, recently in the news, you have another woman that's doing something similar, straight up so-called white woman, all right, masquerading herself as Native American. Why are they choosing Jake? Why are they choosing? She says she identifies as Indian in Saudi Arabia. Why are you choosing Jake? You know. Now, somebody might say, this is like a minute thing, but this is how the so-called white man works. The so-called white man uses something called gradualism, right? Because 50 years ago, 60 years ago, the idea of saying, you can remove your private members, which is against the laws of the Bible. You're not supposed to remove your private members, and surgically, and, cutting yourself open. These things are against the scriptures. But if you was to tell somebody maybe 50 years ago, that someone would do that, and you'll have to accept it as a completely different gender. That person that identified as a male biologically, now that he's removed his private members, he's a female, and you have to accept that. And if you don't, guess what? You could lose your career. You could get canceled on all platforms. So you might say, wait, this is a crazy topic. There's no way somebody will accept somebody say, I identify as a different race now. But with this Babylonian society, Babylon, by the way, means Babal, means confusion. Lawn means land. In this land of confusion, don't be surprised at anything. We're in a country where you can literally marry a dog. People are marrying their cars, having sex with the earth. So this is under the heavy vibration of Satan. So this whole, now you could switch up your race thing. Don't be surprised if they start to push that as another agenda. All right. Now, why is that? Now, what I want to read is the book of Isaiah 25:7. It says, and this is from the King James Bible. It says, and he will destroy in this mountain. Now, the Bible speaks in parables, right? Sometimes you can't take certain words for face value, if you will, right? That mountain represents something. That mountain represents government, right? So, or rulership. So in this present government or rulership, and the proof on that is these oligarchs will get together and have something called a G-Summit meeting, right? A G-Summit meeting, which is all the top oligarchs of these different nations coming together for a meeting. But why they call it a summit meeting? Well, the summit is the top of the mountain. And they're saying, look, we're the top of these governments. So the G8 summit meeting, So it says, and I will destroy in this mountain the face of the covering cast over all people. Now, a covering cast over all people, correct? So, when you watch a movie, let me use two famous movies that people will know. The Godfather, and Scarface. The Godfather, and Scarface, right? In The Godfather, the main character is a man by the name of Michael. And in Scarface, the main character is a man by the name of Tony Montana, right? Now, that's an identity. That's a covering put upon the actor Al Pacino. So at the end of the movie, you see who portrayed this particular character. So he was called Michael in Godfather. He was called Tony Montana in Scarface, but he's portrayed by Al Pacino, the covering cast, right? So when you cast an actor into a role, you put a cover upon him, right? You're going to play this particular role. So it says, I will destroy the covering cast over all people, because the so-called white man has put a casting over all the people. In other words, he's casted himself as the Greeks. He's casted himself as the Romans. He's casted the Moabites as Chinese. You know what I mean? Because guess what? the names that you hear, black, white, Negro, and these types of things, these aren't nationalities that you find in the Bible. All right, there's 18 nations in the Bible. The nation of Israel, who the Lord is dealing with, and then you have the 17 nations who the Lord are not dealing with. You know, and these people are here today because the scriptures tell you there's no end to the people. All right, so these people are here today, and there's different traits that the Bible leaves to identify them. You know, and a lot of these countries know who they are. Like, for the example, the Ishmaelites, the so-called Arabs, which is a mixture of Arab, you know, is a mixture of Ishmaelites and Elamites over there in the Middle East. But Ishmael, all right, Ishmael knows that he's dwelling in the East. He knows that his father is Abraham, right? And it goes so far as the Persians. They just now were casted with that name Iranians. So we have recent history to show us how the so-called white man will take a nation and throw a casting upon them and say, you're this in this role, you know? But when you remove the cast, who's truly playing that role? You'll find out that all the 17 nations are playing a role that the so-called white man has cast upon them, right? And what that does is that cloaks your nationality. And this is why knowing your nationality is so crucial. This is the flesh. When Ezekiel speaks about the dry bones that need flesh, the first thing you put on, the first thing you cloak yourself with should be your nationality. Who am I in the Bible? Okay? Who am I in the Bible? That's a very important information. So the prophets of Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai, risen again, are breaking down, according to the scriptures, who people are. And the so-called white man, and the reason we say so-called means commonly called. He's commonly called white. No one on the planet Earth is white. No one on the planet Earth is black. What the so-called white man is, however, is red. Idumean. All right, his blood, he has that translucent skin, and his blood, comes to the front. You could see them. That's how come they made some Christmas carols, our cheeks shall be rosy, and all that type of stuff. They're red. Different shades of red. You see? Crimson, criminal. But again, he has to cast himself as white and cast you Negroes out there, so-called Negroes, which are, Judah, Benjamin, Levi, as blacks. So it says, I will destroy the covering cast over all people and the veil that is spread over all nations. Again, this is what we're going into. Destroying people's genealogy and nationality. You see? Let me get this now real quick. Because now that people don't know who they are, now you can introduce changing up your race. All that's doing is the so-called white man trying to hide who he is in the Bible. All right? Which is in Edomite, Esau, Edom. The only nation that was not promised any mercy. Pedigree of their fathers, Numbers. So we're going to go to Numbers 1 and 18. And this is how somebody's genealogy is determined. It's not by skin color. You can't slap makeup on your face and say, okay, now I'm this race and that race. That's bullshit. Numbers 1 and 18 reads, and they assembled all the congregation together on the first day of the second month, and they declared their pedigrees after their families. So what house you are? You have this house, that house. By the house of their fathers, according to the number of the names from 20 years old and upward by their polls. So, a house, all right, a genealogy, okay, a heritage or race. Race goes back to the word raza, which means seed, is determined by the man, the father. Why? Because the man carries a sperm, all right? The man carries a seed, okay? No matter if you have an orange seed, no matter where you plant it, no matter what type of soil you use, it shall be an orange seed. You see? That's how come a lot of these nations, all right, including ourselves, including the nation of Israel, is against so-called mixing, is against so-called having the woman of your nation get plowed, all right, or dealt with, okay? by a man of another nation, because that is an attack on your race. You know, those with knowledge understand. You know who gets it too? Them so-called real racist Edomites, in the backwoods and of the South and all that type of stuff. They understand it. They said, yo, they don't even want the most finest jakes. They're trying to breed and keep their situation pure. You see? But guess what? The Most High had to have us mingle our seeds amongst these different nations to cover us in these times, to protect us. Because if all Israel looked the same, trust me, the so-called white man would have formulated ways to just destroy all Negroes and Native Americans by appearance. But thankfully, the Most High has masked us, all right, by us mingling with these other nations, to where there's a confusion of faces, if you will. All right, you have jakes that look like any nation. Okay? But at the end of the day, you are what your father is. And there's not an amount of makeup you could put. There's no, accept me because I'm a new... There's none of that. Whatever your father is, that's what you are, according to the Bible. You see? So, going back to the topic at hand, the so-called white man wants to push this whole changing of your race thing and identifying as a different race, all right, because they know judgment is in store for them. They know what's up for them, you know what I'm saying? All the rape, robberies, and murders and atrocities that they have done, going all the way back when they call themselves Greeks or call themselves Romans or call what they call themselves now, white, all that. They have to pay for it. They have to pay for it. You see, that's how the Bible works. That's how judgment works. You have to pay for the deeds of your actions. All right, now this is the book of Colossians chapter 3, verse 25. It says, but he that doeth wrong shall receive for the wrong which he hath done. Slavery, rape, robbery, murder. All right, how was this land gotten? This land was gotten through trickery, bloodshed, mischief, thievery, wickedness. All right? This land is built upon blood. And the scriptures tell you in the book of Numbers, the 35th chapter, all right? Numbers, it's either number 35 and 33 or 33 and 35, that blood defiles the land. And the only way the land can be cleansed of that blood is the person who sheds the blood, his blood has to be shed. So there's a lot of innocent, scriptures tell you none perish being innocent, but let me say there's a lot of unjust killings and murders that were done, all right, by the so-called white man that he's not yet paid for. Now he wants to run around and masquerade himself as a different race now. Throw that into the mix, all right, to try to escape your judgment, but you can't escape your judgment, man. And really, if that shit was to get pushed further, they'll try to have you Negroes and not Latinos and Native Americans so identified as Chinese and white and so-called, man. Just even more fucking confusion, man. Because that's all this place is. Here it is, black, white, and all that. That's already confusion. Now we're going to mix it up to where you can swap and switch how you feel based on you put some makeup on. This shit's like a goddamn comedy movie. Like that dude Robert Downey Jr. in Tropic Thunder. You got pigment, quote-unquote pigment surgery to become a black man, to play a role of a black man and all that. That was some comical shit, but now look, now they're trying to make it reality. It says, but he that doeth wrong shall receive for the wrong which he hath done, and there is no respect of persons, all right? And that's true wisdom, not to have respect of persons when it comes to judgment. And the Most High, Yahweh Bashim Yahushua, has ultimate wisdom, and he's not a respecter of persons. Okay? Hell, why you think we're in the situation that we're in now, you Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans? Because we have sinned. The Most High held his word. You see? So you think he's not going to keep his word concerning the blessings? And when we get blessed pursuant to the book of Deuteronomy 30, the 30th chapter and the 5th verse, see if I get it real quick. When we get blessed, you nations are going to get cursed. Deuteronomy 30 and 5. And the Lord, Yahweh Bashim Yahushua, thy power, will bring thee into the land which thy fathers possessed, and thou shalt possess it, the land of Israel. And he will do thee good and multiply thee above thy fathers. And the Lord thy power will circumcise thine heart, right? Give us the heart of flesh, all right? Not the stony heart, not a heart that cannot keep the law, statutes, and commandments perfectly, or mind, if you will, all right? Program not to keep the law, statutes, and commandment perfectly, but he's going to give us a heart, a new heart that is able to do it, meaning keeping it involuntarily. You don't have to remind a baby to breathe, okay? It just breathes naturally. So we're going to come out the womb knowing the law, statutes, and commandments, all right? The new covenant. It says, in the heart of thy seed, to love the Lord thy power with all thine heart and with all thy soul, that thou mayest live. And the Lord thy power, now verse 7, this is the point. And the Lord thy power will put all these curses upon thine enemies and them that hate thee. So who are our enemies? Psalms 83, all the other nations. And it starts with the so-called white man in Psalms 83, which persecuted thee. See, so all the blessings are going to come upon us, and all the curses that we're dealing with, they're going to have to deal with. The ability of feeling the grief that you can't keep the laws perfectly, but you have to. You know what I mean? And we're going to be doing things in righteousness, not no homosexual wickedness that the so-called white man has done to punish us. And thou shalt return and obey the voice of the Lord, Yahweh Ba'ashim Yahushai, and do all his commandments which I command thee this day. So that's what we're waiting for, man. All right? That's one of the glories of the kingdom, to get these nations in slavery. But not only that, but to keep the laws and serve the Lord perfectly, man. You know? Because that's something we're praying for, to keep the laws perfectly and serve our Lord perfectly, man. All right? Get the answers to the mysteries of the universe. All right? Waking up to not go slave for this man's kingdom. They're going to wake up to slave for our kingdom, man. Build it up. Yahweh kingdom, really, with us being joint heirs. You see? So that's what we're looking forward to. So this whole bullshit with you changing up genders, now they're trying to change up race, it's all just a bunch of confusion and fuckery. You see, this is what happens when you lean into the philosophy of the so-called white man. And you know who's subject to that easily? Women and children. A woman's mind never goes past that of a 12-year-old, and they're very high-minded, so it's very easy to manipulate them. And a child is very impressionable. So they're trying to indoctrinate this stuff in kindergarten schools. All right, you have certain parents fighting about it, and they indoctrinate these women in them college systems, man. Women are going to colleges and universities far more than men, and that's when they indoctrinate them to tell them, you know what, it's okay to switch up your gender, you could change your race. It confused them. You see, and they're hive-minded, so they'll go along with it. Hey, man, that's why the Lord said if this place was to continue, no flesh shall be saved. That's why Yahweh Ba'ashim Yahushua is going to put an end to America, put an end to this wickedness. You see? So with that, I'm going to give all praises to Yahweh Ba'ashim Yahushua, Ba'ashim Rachak Wadash, that belongs to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone True Well. Salutations to the hopeful elect out there, you Akim, Tizadakim, that do this in the utmost truth and sincerity. Shalom.